I'm not a part of Death Row no more. I'm on No Limit Records right now, getting ready to be on Doggy Style Records, my own label, and I'm looking towards the future. The past is the past, you know what I'm saying? Y'all got enough footage and enough information and documents to let people know what's happening with that.
There's nothing over there. Suge Knight is in jail, Dr. Dre left, and Tupac is dead. It's telling me I'm either going to be dead or in jail, or I'm going to be nothing.
Snoop should be happy that I just stand in his way to try to move on to spread his mother wings. If it wasn't for Suge Knight, he would still be in somebody's cell making dinner.
If your record company CEO, girlfriend, wife, friend is the manager, get rid of her. Get your own management. Get people that believe in you, that love you.
Suge Knight recently said he used to be a superstar and now he's just a no-limit soldier. What do you say to that?
Nothing. He used to be a CEO, now he's just an inmate. But it was more negative than positive, and right now I'm surrounding myself with positivity, so whenever I speak on Death Row, it brings back bad vibes, and I don't really like dwelling on it.
1998 was one hell of a year in hip-hop. DMX brought it back to the streets with his two legendary albums, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, and Flesh of My Flesh, Blood on My Blood, and artists like Outkast and Lauryn Hill were pushing the genre forward with groundbreaking releases that are now considered classics. While 1998 gave all of us countless landmark albums, it wasn't such a nice period for everyone. For the past 2 years, Snoop Dogg had been through a lot of difficulties in his life. His friend and label mate, Tupac Shakur, had been tragically gunned down in Las Vegas. Another friend, Biggie Smalls, had recently met a similar fate. His mentor and producer Dr. Dre had fled the Death Row Records, the label that they built from ground up, and real-life kingpin and label boss Suge Knight had just been sentenced to 9 years in prison for a probation violation. Snoop got acquitted of murder charges in 1996, but it was clear that the trial had taken a mental and emotional toll on him.
We, the jury in above entitled action, find the defendant, McKinley Lee, not guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree in violation of Penal Code Section 187.
After the trial ended, he released his sophomore album, The Dogfather, which was panned by fans and critics, and whispers of Snoop Dogg's downfall begun. Even though it went double platinum, the album didn't produce any hit singles, and many started to question whether he will be able to top his Doggy-style success without the help of Dr. Dre. 1998 was rough for Snoop Dogg, but to his surprise, his problems had just started.
Make sure y'all get my Death Row symbol. Symbolization of greatness.
Welcome to Death Row.
Like we always do about this time.
Up until 1998, in his short 4-year career, Snoop managed to gather a lot of momentum.
Snoop Doggy Dogg, you need to get a job.
His Doggy Style album, which he released in 1993, was an earth-shattering debut, which ultimately became, at the time, the best-selling album of all time. To say that people love Snoop would be an understatement, but like all sweet things, it had to come to an end. In 1996, Snoop's momentum began to stall, and people demanded a second album. Unfortunately, when it arrived, the public was displeased. Just 2 months after Tupac's death, he released The Dogfather, which according to critics, paled in comparison to its predecessor. The involvement of Dr. Dre was certainly missed, but the most noticeable difference was Snoop's effort and overall performance. You couldn't help but notice how he was both creatively and spiritually drained. Despite the setbacks, he wanted to prove to everyone that he still had it, and began working on his next album. But in the meantime, to hold fans over until its release, he decided to release an EP, a small collection of remixes with a couple of new records, naming it Doggumentary. The only problem was that although Suge Knight was in jail, he still held the rights to Snoop Doggy Dogg and all of his music. If Death Row didn't sign off on a release, it wasn't going to happen. The EP was set to be released on October 7, 1997, but the date came and went with no release, and the EP was ultimately shelved. Instead, Death Row Records released the gang-related soundtrack, which only features Snoop on one song, and continued to promote and profit from Tupac and other artists from Death Row Records. Not only they didn't want to see him succeed, but not letting him release music started to create financial problems for Snoop. While on the surface, it seemed like Snoop was living in a mansion, driving these expensive cars, the reality was that everything was in Suge Knight's name. From cars and houses to even his business account. It was either owned by him or managed by his wife, so it gave him full control of everything that Snoop owned. The combination of all of it was the final nail in the coffin for Snoop. He not only felt trapped, but also betrayed. Why Suge started shoveling his music in favor of soundtracks? Was Suge upset that Snoop appeared alongside Puff Daddy, his biggest enemy at the time, on Steve Harvey's show to squash the East versus West beef? Or he just didn't want him to succeed and split ways with him? Only God knows, but the fact was that Snoop was stuck in an ironclad contract, and with royalties slowing up, he had to do something.
Sharik the Night, Nightlife Management, thank y'all. Appreciate everything y'all done for me and took from me. Thank you.
To nobody's surprise, Snoop was frustrated about the situation he was in. It was around this time when he began frequently visiting the offices of Priority Records. He had a close relationship with a number of their artists, like Ice Cube and Mac 10. In response to the madness that was going on, Snoop decided to release an album called F Death Row. This outrageous move was not only encouraged by Mac 10, but he offered him $1 million for it. And Snoop, being reckless and broke at the time, thought, why not? Let's do it. He planned to diss Suge and the entire Death Row label. The only problem, which they decided to turn a blind eye to, was that despite being locked up, Suge and his people were not the ones to mess with, and by putting this album out he was seriously risking his life. If you mess with Death Row, you might not live to see another day. The Priority Records building also served as an office for Master P and No Limit Records. One day, when visiting Mac 10, Snoop saw Mystical, one of No Limit's soldiers. According to Snoop, they didn't have a relationship up to that point, but both respected each other and the work that they've done. He came inside to show his respect, and this was one of the best things that could have happened to Snoop. They showed each other respect, and Mystical said, "I'll be in the studio tonight, come by." At the time, he was working on his album Unpredictable and wanted Snoop Dogg to feature on a song called Gangsters. Snoop came by the studio that night and did the feature. Afterwards, Master P asked, "How much do you want for it?" Snoop was broke at the time and desperately in need of money, so he asked for $3,500. Although he was broke, he was still one of the biggest rappers on the planet, so it doesn't need a genius to understand how low this price was. P responded with "alright" and left it at that. Master P and Snoop began developing a casual friendship and mutual respect in the mid-90s. They both respected each other for one another's accomplishments. The next day, Snoop came by the office to pick up his check, and when he looked at it, his day got better real quick. Instead of writing a check for $3,500, he wrote a check for $35,000. For Snoop, this was more than money. It showed respect and Master P's interest in him as an artist. P asked him, "What are you currently working on?" He responded with, "I plan on releasing an album called F Death Row." Master P closed his office door and told Snoop, "You ain't going to live to see that album come out. Don't do that. You can't make no album dissing Death Row. You got to let that go." P understood the risk that Snoop was taking, and instead of leaving it as it is, he offered him a deal. He gave Snoop some money to take care of his family, and to put a stop to the whole album idea. Thanks to P, Snoop's life was a little bit less in danger, but in order for them to move forward with their deal, they had to overcome one big and powerful man, Suge Knight.
And No Limit is the label that pays, man.
Gangsta's popularity led Snoop to be featured on P's youngest brother, Silk the Shocker's album, Charge It to the Game, on a song called Throw the Hood Up, and later on Fiend's No Limit debut, There's One in Every Family, on a song called Who Got the Fire. Soon people started to speculate and spread rumors that a deal would be soon in place to secure a new label home, but Suge Knight's reputation alone had a lot of labels petrified to do business with him and his associates. If there was one movement at the time that wouldn't allow Suge's boogeyman persona to stand in the way of opportunity, it was No Limit Records. Part of the reason fans embraced Master P and his stable of New Orleans-based rappers was the authenticity with which they carried themselves. If they needed to see you, they would really see you. This deal was greatly beneficial for both sides. Snoop Dogg would finally break free of Death Row Records' chains, make money, and move on with his career, while for Master P, signing such a huge hip-hop star would take his label to unprecedented levels. Before coming to California jail to meet up with Suge, P had a meeting with Priority Records' Vice President of Distribution, Duffy Rich. He asked P, "Do you really want to do this? Are you sure you want to deal with Suge?" To which Master P responded, "He got guns, we got guns. Who cares?" He goes to Mule Creek State Prison in California to meet up with Suge and to negotiate a deal, hopefully acquiring the rights to sign Snoop Dogg. While the amount of money P paid was never disclosed, it is rumored to be around a couple of $1 million. As a part of the deal, Death Row retained the rights to the name Snoop Doggy Dogg and also received a small percentage of Snoop's future earnings. Nevertheless, the deal was soon finalized and Snoop's life was changed forever. Snoop is a No Limit soldier.
And they welcomed me, they treated me well. Southern hospitality, you know. I wouldn't want to be nowhere else, No Limit.
In March of 1998, the No Limit family formally announced the Snoop Dogg signing with the label. He left Los Angeles, taking all of his family and moving to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Master P deserves all the respect that somebody could get. Real hustler, a great businessman, and most importantly, a man with values. Despite making millions of dollars himself, he helped a lot of artists to not only make money, get a career, and do great things in life, but he also introduced them to ownership and educated them about the business in general. Thanks to the grace of God, or just pure coincidence, Mystical and Snoop Dogg bumped heads on that fortunate day, which changed Snoop Dogg's life forever. Nobody knows what could have happened if he released that album, but thankfully, the story played out as it did. The story should serve as a piece of evidence that everyone is one step away from everything.